Inside a marble-floored mansion echoing with chaos, three mischievous children hurled paint at the walls while their terrified nanny sprinted for the door. "I quit," she cried, slamming it behind her. From the grand staircase, Richard Hale, a stern-faced billionaire, rubbed his temples in exhaustion. "That's the sixth one this month," he muttered. At that exact moment, the front door opened, and in walked a gentle-faced woman holding her son's hand. She smiled softly and said, "Good morning. I'm Emily Rivers, the new nanny." The triplets froze. The mansion fell silent. They had no idea their lives, and their father, S. Hart, were about to change forever. The morning sun rose lazily over the Hale estate, spilling golden light across manicured lawns and stone fountains that glistened with dew. To anyone passing by, it looked like a picture of wealth and tranquility, the grand home of a billionaire who seemingly had it all. But inside the towering walls of Ravenwood Manor, peace was nowhere to be found. "Liam, put that paint down right now," a woman's voice shrieked. Her cry echoed through the marble halls, followed by the unmistakable sound of laughter. Three high-pitched giggles tumbling over one another. In the grand sitting room, chaos reigned. A half-finished canvas stood propped against the wall, splattered with streaks of blue and green. The young artist responsible, a messy-haired boy of 7 with a mischievous grin, was gleefully adding handprints to the marble floor. "Stop him, Ella," another voice shouted. "I'm trying," his sister yelled back, though she was laughing too hard to mean it. She had paint smeared across her cheeks like war paint. Their brother, Noah, crouched behind the couch with a toy water gun filled not with water, but bright yellow juice. Their terrified nanny, a middle-aged woman in a neatly pressed uniform, was standing near the doorway, clutching her bag like a life vest. "That's enough," she shouted. "You three are impossible. I've worked with children all my life, but this is madness." Before the triplets could even respond, she turned on her heel, storming through the hall toward the exit. "I quit. I'm done." Her voice echoed down the corridor. Moments later, the front door slammed shut. Silence fell, but only for a moment. Then the children burst into laughter again. From the grand staircase above, Richard Hale, a tall man in his early 40s, descended slowly, one hand tightening around the railing. His expression was calm but weary, his tailored suit immaculate even at home. He stopped halfway down the stairs and surveyed the scene. The splattered paint, the toppled vases, the giggling triplets. "Another one?" he asked dryly. The housekeeper, Mrs. Collins, appeared behind him, wringing her hands. "Yes, sir. That makes 6 nannies this month." Richard exhaled heavily and rubbed the bridge of his nose. 6 in 1 month. That must be some kind of record. "Sir, if I may," Mrs. Collins said gently. "The children, they miss their mother." Richard's jaw tightened. "We all do." He turned away and walked into his office, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. Inside, the walls were lined with books and awards, framed photos of corporate achievements, not family moments. The only personal item on his desk was a small photo of his late wife, Anna, her smile warm and kind. He sat down, staring at it for a long moment. "I'm trying, Anna," he murmured, "but I don't know how to reach them." Outside, the triplets had quieted down. The paint had dried, leaving colorful streaks across the once pristine white wall, a small rebellion in a world of rules and silence. In a modest 2-bedroom apartment, Emily Rivers was tying her 6-year-old son Jack's shoelaces. The place was small but filled with warmth. Handmade drawings covered the fridge, and the faint smell of pancakes lingered in the air. "There," she said, smiling as she double-knotted his shoes. "Ready for a big day?" Jack grinned. "Are you going to your interview today, Mommy?" "Yes, sweetheart. A very important one." Jack tilted his head. "For the big house job?" Emily laughed softly. "Yes, the big house job. Maybe if Mommy gets it, we'll have a little more room to play." He frowned. "But what if the people there aren't nice?" Her smile softened. "Then I'll teach them how to be." She kissed his forehead and grabbed her coat, her folder of references tucked under her arm. As she locked the door behind her, her heart fluttered between hope and worry. The nanny position at the Hale estate paid more than any job she'd ever applied for. Enough to get her and Jack out of debt, maybe even start fresh. But she'd heard the rumors. The Hale triplets were infamous in town. Some called them the Little Storm, others, the terrors of Ravenwood. Every nanny before her had left in tears. Emily's sister had tried to warn her, but Emily's heart was firm. There's no such thing as bad children, she'd told her. Only children who need to be loved differently. She meant it. She'd lost her husband in a car accident 3 years ago, and in those years she'd learned that love, patient, kind love, could heal even the deepest scars. When Emily arrived at the estate, she stood in awe for a moment at the massive iron gates. The mansion beyond was breathtaking. Sprawling gardens, fountains, and a marble driveway lined with luxury cars. Yet, something about it felt cold. The gates opened slowly after she buzzed in, and a butler led her through the echoing hall. Every surface gleamed, every corner spotless. But the air was heavy, like a house that had forgotten how to laugh. In the study, Richard Hale looked up from his desk as the butler announced her. "Sir, this is Miss Emily Rivers, here for the nanny position." Richard nodded curtly. "Thank you, Parker. That'll be all." When the door closed, Emily stepped forward, clutching her folder nervously. "Good afternoon, Mr. Hale. It's an honor to meet you." He gestured toward a chair. "Please sit. You're aware of the nature of the job?" "Yes, sir. 3 children aged 7. He leaned back slightly, studying her. "Triplets. Bright, energetic, and..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Difficult. Every nanny before you has left within days." Emily smiled softly. "Children act out when they're hurting, Mr. Hale. They just need to feel seen." Her calm tone caught him off guard. "You sound confident." "I've raised a son on my own." Confidence was not a choice, and it was survival. For a moment their eyes met, her warmth against his guarded distance. Then he nodded. "You'll start tomorrow. If you can last a week, I'll consider you permanent." "Understood." Emily arrived with Jack, both carrying cheerful energy that the gloomy mansion seemed to swallow whole. Mrs. Collins greeted them warmly and led them to the breakfast hall, where the triplets sat at the long table, whispering and giggling. "That's her," Ella whispered. "Another one." "She looks too nice," Noah added. "She'll quit by lunch." Liam smirked. "Let's test her." When Emily entered, the children went silent, their eyes curious. She smiled gently. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Miss Emily, and this is my son, Jack." Jack waved shyly. "Hi." No response, just 3 pairs of mischievous eyes. Emily set down her bag and glanced at the spilled cereal on the table. She said with mock seriousness. "Looks like the cereal tried to escape the bowl again. Shall we help it find its way back?" The triplets blinked. No adult had ever spoken to them like that before, with humor, not scolding. "I don't clean up messes," Liam said defiantly. "That's fine," Emily said, smiling. "Then I suppose we'll eat breakfast right here on the floor. Less mess to worry about later." The children stared, then burst out laughing. Emily sat cross-legged beside the table, pouring milk into her bowl like it was the most natural thing in the world. Within minutes, the ice had cracked. The children began talking, laughing, even offering to help Jack with his spoon. From the hallway, Richard watched quietly, astonished. No shouting, no crying, just laughter. Bright, innocent laughter that had been missing from the house for years. Mrs. Collins smiled knowingly. "She might just be the one, sir." Richard didn't reply, but as he turned back toward his office, something unspoken flickered in his eyes. A memory of his late wife, laughing in that same room years ago, her voice gentle, patient, and full of love. And though he didn't realize it yet, that morning was the first step in rebuilding not just his family, but his heart. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the mansion windows like liquid gold. The once silent halls now echoed with faint giggles and the rhythmic tapping of little feet. For the first time in months, the air didn't feel so heavy. Emily stood in the kitchen wearing an apron, humming softly as she flipped pancakes. Jack sat at the counter stirring a bowl of batter while the triplets hovered nearby, pretending not to be interested. "Would anyone like to help?" she asked, glancing at them. 3 skeptical faces looked back. Liam folded his arms. "We don't cook, we eat." Emily chuckled. "Well, chefs get the first taste test. Are you sure you don't want to join?" Ella's curiosity betrayed her. "The first taste?" "Of course," Emily said playfully. "That's the chef's reward." 5 minutes later, all 4 children were laughing around the counter, flipping imperfect pancakes and sprinkling too many chocolate chips. Batter splattered on the counter and Emily only laughed harder. From the hallway, Mrs. Collins paused mid-step, her eyes wide with disbelief. In all her years working for the Hales, she had never heard laughter in that kitchen. When Richard came down for breakfast, expecting chaos, he froze in the doorway. The triplets, his wild, uncontrollable triplets, were sitting neatly at the table serving pancakes to each other, with Emily guiding them gently like a conductor leading an orchestra. "Good morning, Mr. Hale," Emily said warmly without missing a beat. "Would you like some breakfast? The chef's made extra." Richard blinked, half amused, half confused. "Chefs?" Liam grinned, holding up a pancake with a hole in the middle. "Our masterpiece." For a fleeting second, Richard smiled, an unfamiliar but genuine smile. In the days that followed, the Hale mansion began to change in subtle, almost magical ways. The once sterile living room became a fortress of pillows and blankets. The long, silent corridors now echoed with stories, music, and bursts of laughter. Emily's gentle touch had turned structure into warmth and routine into joy. She taught the triplets simple things: how to tie their own shoes, write thank you notes, and care for one another. She never raised her voice, never punished them with coldness. When they misbehaved, she didn't scold. She asked questions. "Why do you think that hurt your sister's feelings, Noah? What could we do differently next time, Ella?" And somehow they listened. Richard noticed the difference quickly. Liam had stopped throwing tantrums. Ella started drawing again, beautiful sketches of her mother from memory. Noah, once the most stubborn, had become protective of Jack, helping him with his homework. It was as though love had found its way back into the house. One afternoon, Emily took the children outside for what she called a nature lesson. She spread a blanket across the grass, handed them small notebooks, and said, "Today, we'll listen to the world." The triplets blinked. "Listen to the world?" Ella asked. "Yes," Emily said softly. "Close your eyes. What do you hear?" They sat quietly, the wind rustling through the trees. "I hear birds," Noah whispered. "Good," Emily said. "What else?" "I hear the fountain," Ella added. Liam frowned. "I hear nothing," Emily smiled. "Then you're listening to peace. That's the hardest thing to hear." At the window overlooking the garden, Richard stood with a cup of coffee in hand, watching the scene unfold. For the first time, his children looked whole. Not restless, not wild, just happy. He turned to Mrs. Collins, who stood beside him, smiling faintly. "She's remarkable," she whispered. Richard said nothing, but inside, something shifted, something long buried under grief and guilt. That night, after the children went to bed, Richard called Emily into his study. "You've done something extraordinary here," he began. "I don't know how, but the children are different, calmer." Emily smiled modestly. "They just needed a little patience." He nodded, his gaze dropping to the photo of his late wife on his desk. "My wife used to say the same thing. She believed love was stronger than discipline." "She was right," Emily said softly. Richard looked at her, really looked at her, the quiet strength in her eyes, the calm kindness in her voice. For a brief moment, the silence between them felt alive, fragile, meaningful, but then the phone rang. It was Veronica Chase, his business partner. Her sharp, cold voice sliced through the air. "Richard, the investors are demanding results. And another thing, I've heard about your new nanny." Don't tell me you're letting her distract you from work." Richard's tone hardened. "Veronica, she's a single mother with no formal background," Veronica interrupted. "These people always have motives, be careful." Richard clenched his jaw. "Good night, Veronica." He hung up, his expression clouding. Emily sensed his distance returning. She smiled politely, excused herself, and left the room quietly. The next few days brought tension. Emily noticed Richard growing distant again, buried in work, missing dinners, retreating into silence. The children noticed too. "Is Daddy mad again?" Ella whispered one night. "No," Emily assured her softly. "He's just forgotten what joy feels like. We'll remind him." But soon Veronica's shadow crept further into their lives. One afternoon, while Emily was in the garden with the children, Veronica arrived unannounced in her sleek black car. She stepped out, tall and polished, her smile thin. "So, you're the miracle nanny," she said coolly. Emily stood politely. "I just do my best." "Enjoy it while it lasts," Veronica murmured. "Men like Richard don't keep people like you around for long." Her words stung, but Emily refused to react. "Children respond best to love, Miss Chase. You might try it sometime." Veronica's eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone." Before either could say more, Richard appeared at the door, his expression unreadable. "Veronica, I didn't expect you." "Just checking in," she said smoothly, and sharing a bit of friendly advice. She cast a final glance at Emily and added under her breath, "You'll regret trusting her." When she left, Emily turned to Richard, her voice steady. "If my presence causes trouble, Mr. Hale, I can resign." He hesitated, his voice low. "You're not the problem here, Emily. Don't let anyone make you doubt that." That night, after tucking the children into bed, Emily found Liam sitting alone on the staircase, clutching a small photo of his mother. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, sitting beside him. He shook his head. "I miss her." Emily's heart softened. "I know. She must have been wonderful. She used to sing to us," he whispered. "Daddy doesn't anymore." Emily wrapped an arm around him gently. "Then maybe we should remind him of the song." The next evening, the triplets gathered around the piano in the living room, Emily guiding them as they sang their mother's favorite lullaby. Their voices were soft, hesitant at first, then full and warm. Richard, drawn by the sound, stepped quietly into the doorway. His throat tightened. He hadn't heard that song in years. When the children saw him, they smiled. "Daddy, we remembered Mommy's song." For a long moment, Richard couldn't speak. He crossed the room, knelt beside them, and hugged all three tightly. Emily stood back, tears in her eyes. It was the first time she'd seen him truly open his heart, and though no words were spoken between them, Richard knew this woman had done what no one else could. She hadn't just changed his children. She'd brought life back into a home that had forgotten how to love. The Hale mansion had changed beyond recognition. The once cold halls now glowed with warmth. Laughter filled the kitchen each morning. The sound of tiny feet echoed on the grand staircase, and the air carried the scent of freshly baked cookies instead of polish and perfume. For the first time in years, the estate felt alive. But not everyone welcomed the change. Veronica Chase stood in Richard's office one afternoon, her arms folded, her tone sharp. "Richard, whatever it is you're allowing to happen, is a mistake. You're becoming sentimental. You're losing focus." Richard's eyes were steady but cold. "My family isn't a distraction, Veronica." "Family?" she scoffed. "You mean that nanny and her child? You're letting emotions cloud your judgment. People will talk." Richard's jaw tightened. "Let them." Veronica stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You're risking everything we've built. You need to end this before it goes too far." He turned away, gazing out the window at the garden where Emily and the children were laughing together. "It's already gone too far," he said quietly. That evening, Emily noticed Richard's silence. He joined them at dinner but barely spoke, his mind clearly elsewhere. When the children went upstairs, she lingered by the table, folding napkins with deliberate calm. "Something's troubling you," she said softly. Richard hesitated, then looked up. "You've done more for this family than anyone. But there are people who don't understand." "I see," she said gently. "And what do you believe, Mr. Hale?" He didn't answer. That silence said more than words. She nodded slowly, forcing a small smile. "Sometimes doing what's right doesn't please everyone." Then she excused herself, though her chest ached with unspoken pain. Later that night, she sat by the window in her small quarters, Jack asleep beside her. The stars above the estate shimmered faintly, distant and cold. She whispered to herself, "Maybe love isn't meant to stay. Maybe it just comes to remind us what we lost." But even as doubt tugged at her heart, she knew she couldn't leave without saying goodbye properly, not to the children who had begun to feel like her own. The next morning, Emily gathered her courage and approached Mrs. Collins. "Would you please tell Mr. Hale that I'll be leaving at the end of the week?" The older woman's eyes widened. "Oh dear, are you sure?" Emily nodded with a faint, bittersweet smile. "It's best for everyone. He needs space to be their father again. They'll be fine." But the children overheard. Hidden behind the hallway door, Ella gasped, "She's leaving." Liam shook his head fiercely. "No, we can't let her go." Noah's voice trembled. She made Daddy smile again. "We need her." The triplets huddled together, whispering, their little faces determined. "Then we'll make him listen." That evening, the mansion buzzed with mysterious energy. Emily, returning from the garden, found the dining room dimly lit with candles. The long table was decorated with paper hearts, unevenly cut and colored with crayons. In the center sat a note written in messy handwriting. "Please don't leave us, Miss M." The triplets appeared from behind the curtains, their eyes teary but brave. "Did we do it right?" Ella asked, her voice shaking. "We wanted it to be special." Emily knelt down, her eyes glistening. "Oh, my sweet angels. Yes, it's perfect." Before she could say more, Richard appeared in the doorway, stunned. "What's going on here?" Liam turned to him, his voice breaking. "Daddy, you can't let her go. We'll be good, we promise. Just don't make her leave." Richard froze, guilt slicing through him. "No one's making her leave." Emily stood, her composure trembling. "It was my decision." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Why?" She took a deep breath. "Because I don't belong in your world, Richard. I came here to help your children heal, not to become the reason people question your choices." He looked at her, the pain in his eyes raw and human. "Emily, you've done more than heal them. You've healed me." Her voice softened. "Then you'll understand why I must go before I undo that." The triplets began to cry, clinging to her dress. "Please, Miss M, don't leave us." Richard watched helplessly as she knelt to comfort them, her hands trembling. It was then he realized what he truly feared, not losing her as an employee, but losing her as the heartbeat of their home. The following morning, the mansion was silent again, the way it had been before Emily arrived. The laughter was gone, the children barely spoke. Even the sunlight seemed dimmer. Richard sat in his study, staring at the empty doorway where Emily usually appeared with a gentle knock and a smile. Mrs. Collins entered quietly. "Sir," she said softly, "forgive me for saying this, but if you let her leave without a word, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Richard looked up slowly. "Where is she?" "At the bus station." She didn't want a farewell. Without another word, he grabbed his coat and keys, his heart pounding. At the small-town station, Emily stood on the platform, clutching Jack's hand and her worn suitcase. The air smelled faintly of rain, and the train whistle echoed in the distance. She looked down at her son. "Ready, sweetheart?" Jack hesitated. "Mommy, I don't want to leave. I like them. They're like family." Her voice trembled. "I know, honey, but sometimes love means saying goodbye." Just then, a voice called out, deep, Urgent, familiar. Emily. She turned sharply. Richard was striding through the crowd, slightly out of breath, his usual composure replaced by something raw, unguarded. "Please," he said, stopping in front of her. "Don't go." "Richard, this isn't right," she began. "You don't owe me anything." He shook his head. "You don't understand. You didn't just teach my children to love again, you taught me." He knelt down to Jack's level and smiled softly. "You made my kids laugh again, young man. Thank you for sharing your mom with us." Jack smiled shyly. Richard stood and met Emily's eyes, his voice breaking. "Stay. Not as their nanny, as part of our family." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. "Richard," he took her hand gently, "I lost my wife once. I can't lose another person who brought us back to life." For a long, fragile moment, the world seemed to pause. The train, the noise, the rush, everything faded into silence. Then Emily exhaled shakily and whispered, "All right, I'll stay." Weeks passed and the Hale mansion once again bloomed with joy. Emily and Jack officially moved in, the children overjoyed. The triplets insisted on sharing chores, proudly announcing that they worked for Mom now. The family spent evenings baking, playing piano, and laughing around the fireplace. One afternoon, as they all sat in the garden, Ella climbed into Emily's lap. "Mommy, will you tell us a story?" Emily froze for a heartbeat, her eyes meeting Richard's. He smiled gently. "Yes, sweetheart," she said softly. "I think I will." As the children listened intently, Richard slipped his arm around her shoulders. The setting sun bathed them all in golden light, a picture of the family that had been lost found again through patience and love. Love does not always come in the form we expect. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through kindness, laughter, and the courage to care when others have given up. Because when we teach with love, we don't just change children's lives, we transform our own.